It was Saturday, and I had decided to use my weekend to do some research. I've been working for Camber & Son for about a month now, but it seemed like I'd been there no time at all some days. Have you ever had a job where you just instantly mesh with the people there? You find yourself forming inside jokes, easily forming friendships, without any real effort, maybe even feeling like you've always been there. That was how I felt while I was on Garza's crew. They had all been members of one military branch or another, and all of us had seen different struggles that had included combat for many of us. But the experience had made us grateful for each other, especially as we now seemed to be fighting a very different war. My secret designs, however, sometimes made me feel like a spy rather than a soldier. What would my new friends say if they knew what I was planning? What would they think if they knew my goals? These were things I hadn't even shared with my father, and I knew I was likely to find myself asked to leave not only Camber & Son, but likely the town if they came to light. If I was going to go into the woods, however, I would need to be prepared. This wasn't something I could do half-cocked, and that would take knowledge and time. I had already decided that going into the deep woods alone would be a mistake. I had lived here all my life, but, as I'm sure will come as no surprise to you, the woods were not a place where parents encourage their kids to play. You could get picked up right off the street by the foresters. Going into the place they lived seemed like a great way to never come home again. Very few people who didn't work with the Deep Wood outfit knew much about the forest or the foresters, and it seemed that would be my first hurdle. Despite most people having never met one, there were rules in place that every child knew from a young age. I've talked about them a bit, but I don't think I really believed in them until Simon got snatched. But we all followed the rules like good kids, regardless. Most of it was that our parents believed in them, and they made sure that we knew what would happen if we didn't follow the rules. Ah yes, the rules. Don't go out after dark. If it's foggy, don't go out at all. If the fog suddenly appears, stand absolutely still until it passes. If you see a forester, don't run. Stand perfectly still until they leave. You could see them all over town, and after being gone for a while, it was a little jarring to see them again. They hung right next to posters for yard sales and band recitals, and the contrast was something you never really got used to. Walking up the sidewalk as I made my way for Susan's bookstore, I caught sight of one as it flapped merrily on the glass of the old hardware store. It must be new because someone had added the line, "Be safe this holiday season," to the bottom. Whether they meant Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, or all of the above, I had no idea. It was the last week of November, and the chill was really beginning to mount. I'd spent far longer than I wanted to in a desert, and the cold was honestly something I had looked forward to. Now, with my gloves, 2 pairs of socks, and a scarf draped over my face, I kinda missed the heat. The bookstore was on Main Street, not far from Lafferty's, and it had belonged to her parents before they gave it to Susan when she finished business school. Susan always loved books, and Wormwood Books was always dripping with paperbacks, hardcovers, and various older publications. I can remember Simon and I going there from time to look at newspaper articles for school projects. Mr. and Mrs. Brayman had a collection of old town papers and documents that rivaled the public library, and a lot of history buffs went in there to peruse the shelves. The bell jangled merrily overhead as I came in, and when Susan looked up to greet me, I saw her smile nearly take in her ears. Susan and I had always been close, even closer after my brother was taken, and I think she had hoped I might return home and pick up old habits again. As much as I would have liked that, I just didn't feel that I could do that to her. Knowing how my mission was likely to end, it felt like forcing her to lose me all over again. "Jeff," she said, leaning on the counter, "I was beginning to wonder if you were ever going to come and see me." "Well, I've been pretty busy in the woods. The forest just keeps getting closer and closer without us to cut it back." She nodded. "As it's always been, I'm afraid. What brings you in today? Clearly not just to see little old me." She smiled as she said it, but there was a note of sadness behind it I couldn't miss. "I'm, curious about the Foresters," I said, pitching my voice low. There weren't a lot of people in here, but I still didn't want to raise any suspicion. You know, since I have to work so close with them. "Hopefully not too close," she said, walking out from behind the counter and leading me into the back. The sales floor was for paperbacks and first editions. The back room was for the good stuff. The Brennans had spent their life collecting rare and important things, and it made them a lot of money from people looking to research different topics. Susan likely had historians and antiquity students coming and going, paying for the privilege to root through her back rooms. I could see shelves that sagged with old books on battles from hundreds of years ago, leather-bound tomes on horticulture and herbcraft, and lists of royal bloodlines. And that was just the books that I could see and read the titles of. The section she brought me to was full of ledgers from the town founders and the beginning of our oppression with the Foresters. "It would be easier if I knew what you were looking for," she hedged, pointing to an old desk beside a dusty shelf. "I'm just doing a little reading. They're interesting, right? We've lived with them for so long, and yet we don't really understand them." Susan scoffed. "Don't we? We know they make the fog. We know they snatch people who are out after dark. We know they take kids when they can..." But she stopped talking as she realized what she was saying. "I'm sorry, Jeff. I let my mouth get away from me." "It's fine. People sometimes forget. We've all known someone who's lost someone to the Foresters." She nodded. I'll let you get to it. Remember, you have to wear the gloves if you touch the ledgers on the first or second shelf. They're in the top drawer." She left me to my devices, and I got started. Rayffered had been established in 1710. It was a logging town from the very start, but the loggers they sent into the woods came back with strange tales of creatures who took stragglers and seemed to bring demonic mists with them. Those who lit fires in the woods were never seen again, and the woods they cut back to build the town seemed to grow back at an unnatural rate. Many saw strange things at night, and residents quickly learned not to go out after dark. In 1720, one of the Rayffered magistrates claimed to have met one of the creatures, and he had given it the name Forester. One of his scribes had written his account down, since it was said that his honor was too shaken by the incident to hold a pen. He had been enjoying a pipe on the back porch of his home when a fog had suddenly rolled in, and one of the creatures had approached him. He had drawn his pistol, expecting to be taken, but wanting to go down fighting. But the creature had surprised him. Instead of taking him, it had spoken. The creature told me that it had come with a deal from the deep woods. The Foresters would continue to make the trees grow into the settlement, something they had already been doing, and the people would be free to cut them back. He told the magistrate to keep his people out of the woods that surrounded the town, though they would be free to hunt outside the deep woods during the daylight hours. No one, under any circumstances, was to light a fire inside the woods at any time, he said, and on that the creature would not budge. The logging could continue, the town could continue, and there would be no need for anyone to encroach on anyone else. For a while, this seemed to work. The town lived by the rules, and those who didn't were never seen again. People who chose to homestead in the woods disappeared. Those who went into the woods after dark disappeared. Anyone who lit a fire in the woods disappeared. The logging went on through the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and it wasn't until the start of World War I that the treaty was broken. I was into the less crumbly ledgers by then, and found out that the mayor of 1915, Charles Magus, had decreed that the woods would again be cut. He was tired of living with superstition, and the town needed to grow. He organized contracts for several lumber companies and told them to cut as deep as they liked. When they started going missing, however, the old superstition seemed to become a little more real. 25 people went missing that first year, 10 the year after that, and 10 the year after that. If the foresters sent another emissary, it was ignored this time. The town grew, the forest continued to be cut back, and people kept going missing. That was when the rules were first established, and after that, fewer people went missing. The curfew went into place next year when the new mayor came into office. The town lived, though it lived in fear. Then came the bad night, the burning night. In 1938, the mayor decided he'd had enough of the foresters. Reginald Fox had campaigned on the grounds that he would do something about the forester problem, and boy had he. He went into the woods with a group of loggers and firemen and set the woods on fire. He claimed it was a controlled burn, something that would burn the woods away from the town, but instead of mist, it said that a black smoke buffeted the town. The foresters took 15 people in broad daylight, while the smoke covered everything, and none of the 60 men who'd gone into the woods were ever seen again. It was the largest loss to date, and the town had never set fire to the woods again. They had learned their lesson, it seemed, and it was a lesson they never forgot. Find what you're looking for? I jumped, catching the ledger as it started to fall, and looked up to find Susan smiling over me. Did I catch you doing something naughty? You didn't find any of Dad's old photo books Mom always accused him of having kept, did you? No, I said, nothing like that. Just doing a bit of research. On the foresters, she said, not a question. Yeah, just doing some reading. Well, I hate to kick you out, but it's 5 o'clock and I need to close up before the sun goes down. Business hours are pretty bad during the winter. I looked at the little window near the ceiling, and sure enough, the sun was going down. I'd spent 5 hours back here poring over dusty tomes. Mom would be worried if I came running home right at dark again, like I'd done on Halloween, and I apologized for holding her up. No, any time. I won't pretend it isn't nice to have you hanging around. I felt a wiggly feeling in my guts, but I squashed it. I had a mission, and I couldn't lose sight of it. Would you mind if I came back next Saturday? I still want to do a little more reading. Of course. If you tell me what you're after, I can get some things out and make sure they're ready. I'll know them when I find them, but till then I'm just not sure. I put the ledgers away neatly and said my goodbyes, but when she called my name, I found myself brought up short. You know, you can tell me if you're doing something that maybe isn't wise. I won't judge you. I might even be able to help you. She looked so earnest as she locked eyes that I almost confessed my plans right there. Maybe she could help me. Maybe your dad could even help me. But I knew I couldn't bring her in on this. I wouldn't put her in any more danger than I had to. I wouldn't have another life on my conscience. I'll see you next week, I said, leaving out the front door before I could lose my resolve. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Saikat, Kendall, Janet and Chris Kinsella for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. And, of course, thanks to Xaronan, Winter, Tyler Parker, Stephanie Carrington, Sarah ASMR, Hi Stacy, Emily Coltsfoot, and Cinnamon Fox, and Bella Lee for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. As I said, if you'd like to have your name read out at the end of every episode that I make, and maybe get a little more, come on down to Patreon and sign up, or become a member on YouTube. Ghostly Reader tier contributors get a book anytime I write one, which is usually about twice a year. So, what are you waiting for? Come on down and give it a look. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.